Before you decide who someone is, before you write them off as weak. As prey, you should ask yourself one question. What if they're not climbing to survive, but waiting for you to fall? Don't go anywhere. This story will change how you see the people around you. Subscribe and join us, because the quiet ones have the most to say. The sun was a brilliant, unforgiving gold over the Sierra Vista overlook, painting the jagged canyon walls in hues of rust and amber. Below, the world fell away into a dizzying abyss, a 1,000-foot drop into a river that snaked through the canyon floor like a silver thread. The air was thin and clean, scented with pine and dry earth. It was the perfect backdrop for the West Ridge High School annual fall picnic, a day meant for laughter and light-hearted escape from the confines of the classroom. Colorful blankets were scattered across the grassy clearing like patches of a quilt, weighed down by coolers and chip bags. The chatter of hundreds of students mingled with the distant cry of a hawk. On one such blanket, set a careful distance from the boisterous center of the crowd, sat Maya. To anyone who bothered to look, and few did, she was a study in quietude. She was 17, with hair the color of dark honey that she often hid behind, and eyes that seemed to take in too much of the world at once. She wore a simple, faded gray hoodie and jeans. Her posture curved in on itself as if making herself a smaller target. At school, she was a ghost, a whisper in the hallway. She was the girl who ate lunch alone in the library, who always had the right answer in physics, but was too afraid to raise her hand. The story everyone knew, the one that defined her, was the tragedy of her parents. They were aid workers, killed in a conflict overseas when she was 12. The official letter said it was a car accident, a random act of violence. It was a story that bred a certain kind of pity, the kind that quickly curdles into indifference. What no one knew, what was buried under layers of classified files and deliberate silence, was the truth. Her father wasn't just an aid worker. He was Lieutenant Commander James Thorne, one of the most decorated and respected Navy SEALs of his generation. Her mother, Dr. Elena Thorne, was a brilliant trauma surgeon who often volunteered with military-affiliated NGOs. Their deaths weren't random, they were targeted. And Maya, their only child, hadn't been shipped off to a distant relative. She had been absorbed into the only family her father truly trusted, the teams. For the past 5 years, her life had been a paradox. By day, she was Maya Thorne, the shy orphan girl trying to navigate the treacherous waters of American high school. By night, and on countless weekends at a private, secure facility, she was Thorne's daughter, a protege under the fierce and loving tutelage of her father's brothers. In arms, men like Master Chief Grizzly Miller, a man with a voice like grinding gravel and a heart that, for her, was soft as butter. He had taught her things no teenager should ever need to know. How to disarm a man twice her size. How to read a room for threats in 3 seconds. How to control her breathing until her heart rate was a slow, steady drum even in utter chaos. How to fall and how to climb. Ropes are a tool, Maya. Grizzly would growl, his face close to hers as she dangled from a training wall. They are not a crutch. A SEAL uses what's there. The rock, the crack, the friction of your own will. Remember, we don't need ropes to rise. This dual life had carved her into two people. The one she showed the world was fragile, designed to be overlooked. The one inside was made of tungsten steel. But today, at the cliff's edge, the steel was feeling strained. The problem had a name, 3 names, and they were currently swaggering across the picnic grounds in matching black and gold varsity jackets. Chad, the quarterback, with a jawline that looked like it had been carved from granite and a brain to match. Jake, his wide receiver sidekick, all fast, twitch muscles and cruel laughter. And Brad, the lumbering lineman, whose purpose seemed to be pure, mindless mass. They were the kings of West Ridge High, their status cemented by Friday night touchdowns and a pervasive, unshakable arrogance. For weeks, their attention had been circling Maya. It had started with small things, a misplaced book, an accidental bump in the hallway. But lately, it had escalated. It was as if they'd sensed a crack in her carefully constructed facade, a vulnerability they couldn't resist poking. Chad, in particular, seemed to relish it. He'd call her Orphan Annie, just loud enough for her to hear, a smirk playing on his lips. Today, with the vast, unsupervised wilderness around them, their confidence was at a peak. The first incident happened near the food table. Maya was reaching for a soda when Brad stumbled into her, sending her stumbling and the can clattering to the ground. Oops, he grunted, not sounding sorry at all. Jake laughed, a high, sharp sound. Watch it? Clumsy. Maya had just straightened up, her eyes downcast, the trained part of her brain already running through a dozen ways to disable Brad and put Jakey's head through the picnic table. But the shy girl persona won. She muttered an apology and walked away, her hands trembling not from fear, but from the effort of restraint. She felt Grizzly's voice in her head. Patience, Maya. The battlefield chooses you. You don't choose it. She found a measure of peace on a flat, sun-warmed rock near the cliff's edge, far from the main crowd. She pulled out a book, a thick volume on advanced thermodynamics, and tried to lose herself in the orderly world of equations. For a while it worked. The wind whispered through the pines, and the sheer drop a few yards away was just a fact of the landscape, not a threat. She felt the familiar calm of focus settle over her. It didn't last. The shadows of the three boys fell over her page. Heavy reading Orphan Annie, Chad said, his voice dripping with false charm. Trying to calculate how far you'd fall. Jake snickered. Might want to use a calculator. Wouldn't want to get it wrong. Maya didn't look up. Please leave me alone. Her voice was quiet, but it lacked the tremor they expected. Ah, we're just being friendly, Chad crooned. He nudged her backpack with his foot. What else you got in here? Pictures of your dead parents. The air left Maya's lungs. It was a low blow even for them. A cold fury, sharp and clear, began to replace the calm inside her. She slowly closed her book. Just walk away, Chad, she said, her voice low. He laughed, a loud, booming sound meant for an audience. Or what? You'll cry. You'll run to a teacher. He took a step closer, his smirk triumphant. There are no teachers here, Annie. Justice. It was then that Brad, eager to please, reached down and snatched her book. Let's see how this flies, he yelled, and with a grunt of effort, he hurled it over the cliff's edge. They all watched it fall, the pages fluttering like a wounded bird, before it vanished into the vastness below. A profound silence descended upon their little group. For Maya, it was the sound of a line being crossed. The book was a gift from her father. It was one of the few things she had left. She stood up. The movement was not the cowering shuffle they anticipated. It was fluid, economical, and utterly controlled. She turned to face them, and for the first time, she looked Chad directly in the eyes. The Shea girl was gone, burned away by the fire of their cruelty. What was left was something else entirely. Something calm and dangerous. You shouldn't have done that, she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. It was a statement of fact. Chad, for a split second, was taken aback. Then his bravado returned, fueled by the confusion. Oh, yeah. What are you going to do about it? He shoved her. It wasn't a hard shove, but it was enough. Her heels were on the very edge of the cliff. The ground crumbled slightly under her weight. A collective gasp went up from a few students who had turned to watch the drama unfold. Their faces were masks of horror. Jake, caught up in the moment, stepped forward and gave her another push. Yeah, how do you like that? It was Brad, wanting to be part of the action, who delivered the final, fateful shove. He put all his weight into it, a mindless, brutal thrust to her shoulders. Maya's eyes met Chad's for one last, searing moment. There was no fear in them. There was pity. And then she was gone, vanishing over the edge without a scream. A dead, suffocating silence fell over the overlook. The cheerful sounds of the picnic seemed to have been sucked into a void. Chad, Jake, and Brad stood frozen at the edge, their smirks wiped away, replaced by a dawning, gut-wrenching terror.